Hello, lovely listeners. Welcome to the Mauve Coaching Podcast, where we talk all things health and fitness, emotional and mental health, career chats, travelling, just life in general, to be honest, the good, the bad, the ugly, and absolutely everything in between. This podcast serves as a safe space for myself, for the lovely guests that I'll have on here, and for you guys listening to be raw and real, to be open, vulnerable, and transparent. Absolutely no filter. With that in mind, let's get stuck in. Hello everyone and welcome back to the Mauve Coaching Podcast. This is episode 12 and it is the season 2 finale, and no better way to wrap up this season than to be wrapping up alongside that of my Bali chapter. It's so weird saying that, to be honest, before we even get stuck in. I didn't think my Bali chapter would be, so short in the grand scheme of things. You know, a grand total of, 9 months, say, on this beautiful island. And yeah, I didn't think my time here would be coming to an end so quickly, as I said, in the grand scheme of things, because I really did think I wanted to settle here indefinitely, but also so abruptly, because part of what we'll be chatting about today, I guess, is how you gotta go with your gut. Actually, it's majority of what we're going to be talking about. And eventually what happened with me in my case, which we'll chat in further detail about, was going with my gut, which meant to a very last minute decision to move to Sydney, Australia, which is something I'm sure if you follow me on Instagram and you're listening to this podcast, you're probably aware of, because the reason I'm doing this podcast actually is because I got so many people being like, oh my God, what the hell? Why are you leaving? You know, Bali looks amazing, like you're thriving. And then I popped up that poll and it was like, should I do an episode on this? Because honestly, my brain at the time, because I'd only just processed the news myself, say a week before that I was making the move, could not handle the influx of messages I was getting questioning my reasons. And I know that I'm not obliged to share all the ins and outs of my personal life, which I certainly do not do, despite my transparency and honesty. I obviously do have to keep some things private, just for the sake of sanity and not everyone knowing everything about me, considering how much I share already as is. It was just a lot, and I was like, maybe I should just wrap up the season with this topic because it just makes sense. It aligns, and I don't know what the podcast studio situation will be in Australia. Maybe I'll make my own setup. And to be honest, I do want to do another season soon. I will be taking a little break just to kind of rejuvenate and to fall back in love with the process. And I know that once I meet all the beautiful souls that are over there, that's the thing. One of the reasons I'm going over as well is that so many incredible souls that I've already met and connected with on such a deep level, as well as more people that I haven't met yet before, I'm just like pen pals with on Instagram, are all located there. So it would be really cool to get some incredible guests on for the season 3, whenever that may be. Just a little note, I guess, before we even get stuck in, I appreciate you guys so much for following me on this journey, and your support, like, honestly doesn't go amiss. The messages I receive about this podcast, about how some things I say resonate with you and the topics at hand, it really does make it all worthwhile putting myself so out there. So I'm really appreciative of any supportive, kind messages I get. Okay, so let's get stuck in. So, quick disclaimer, I guess, before I even chat about why I'm leaving Bali. This is something that I don't want people to, assume is that I'm dipping because of what is called the grass is always greener complex, okay? And this is something that I'm hyper aware to, and I've spoken about before in this podcast, especially considering the move I made last year being quite a spontaneous one, as I was going through a lot, and it made sense to me at the time to kind of, once again, go with the spontaneous move. Maybe I'm more spontaneous than I actually give myself credit for. As I said before, I'm a Sagittarius, and that's meant to be in my nature, but I am my own unique individual, so I'm like, I don't know. I thought I loved stability and routine, but my actions tell me otherwise. But going back to that is that when I first moved to Bali, officially, I was here on holiday, like you guys know, if you've been following the pod and my story, I was initially here on holiday, that turned into a 2-month stay, then went home for a couple months and came back officially on my own moving here. That was quite, not spontaneous in the sense that like it was like I booked my flight the day before I left. It was, you know, not too much detailed strategy planning went into it. And that was something that was quite alien to me because my whole life, I guess, I was very on track for a very linear, guaranteed pathway in all avenues. So career, personal life, everything seemed to just be one way. And for me, that was such a big move to just pack up my bags, book the flight, and just do it. But I do remember the people that cared about me around me, and still do, worry that I was just falling victim to that complex of, as I said, the grass is always greener. And that's something that, as I said, I want to address straight away. It's the saying, wherever you are, there you are, rings true to this day just as much as it did when I first spoke about it on whatever podcast episode I spoke about it on, because just because I'm closing this chapter to physically relocate, like my external environment is changing, that's not to say that the rationale behind that or the driver is because I'm looking to this grass and thinking it's greener. Don't get me wrong, there were moments, like we'll chat about now, when I talk you through like my pro and con list and how I weighted each pro and con. I am that detail oriented, which is why it really doesn't make sense, the spontaneity and the detail. I think that's where like conflict of personality traits, it's like an inner battle between the two, honestly, because my heart tells me one thing, my brain tells me another, basically. But yeah, going back to that, the pro and con list, you know, when I was writing them down, a lot of them, when you boil it down to it, will be based on, I guess, you know, like my friends are all over there and I'll be supported by my tribe again, which is like my community of people that I surround myself with. And of course that plays a factor, okay? I would be in complete denial, which we don't like, if I said otherwise. But what it boils down to is intuition and gut instinct. And I ummed and ahed about it for so long. Like, we're talking 3.5 months, more, nearly 4 months. And, you know, I resisted for so long because I was adamant that I was like, nope, it's all on the internal environment, baby. But alas, there's two types of environments: internal, what goes on in here, and external, like your surroundings, where you are, who you surround yourself with, etc. And at the end of the day, like, you can do so much work on your internal environment, but sometimes there are things around you that need to change, and that's okay. And I would have been super resistant to that. Like I said, I've resisted it for like months and months and months, and I increasingly was just becoming more and more, I guess, discontent and maybe even misaligned with where I needed to be because of that resistance to my inner gut instinct. So that's what we're going to talk about. But just wanted to quickly disclaim that the grass is not necessarily always greener. I know that a lot of people are moving, especially post-COVID, especially with the rental rates going up so much in Ireland. You know, it's like, well, if I'm going to be paying that much for a little room in Dublin, I might as well be moving to Sydney, right? But don't move to Sydney, because lads, I'm telling you now, that rental crisis is a real thing. Currently, going to be homeless, so that's fun. But we'll figure it out. This is part of the journey, part of the experience, part of the resiliency that we're going to be chatting about as well. But I know that if I was home right now, I would be looking at, like, say, even like the likes of me, I'd be looking at people like me doing what I'm doing and being like, I want that, you know? And to an extent that was similar to what I felt. I was like, I want to be living this life. Like, I want to feel like gratitude on a daily basis. But honestly, it all does start within, like, it does start with your internal environment. But there is a role, like I said, for the external environment. And sometimes the external environment change can be a catalyst to that internal environment growth. It was for me. Like, I would not be the person I am today, sitting right here in front of you as I record a podcast that I never believed I would ever have the metaphorical balls to do if I hadn't made that move. So, you know, opportunities and growth opportunities in particular come with making changes to your external environment, like location, like I said, like who you surround yourself with. Wouldn't have met half the people that I did in my industry and the deep soul connections that I've spoken about before with them had I not come here. Like, it's very difficult to make the type of connections that I've made via Instagram, you know, like you only kind of experience connections of that depth once you've been through a lot together, once you've kind of helped each other through the highs and lows that come with living in a place like Bali, say, which, as I've spoken about before, leads to very, very high highs and very, very low lows, at least in my case, for someone who feels quite deeply, quite melancholic, and just feel energy, I guess, on a more higher frequency than maybe other people would. Both a blessing and a curse. We spoke about it in last week's episode with the lovely Liz in terms of like highly sensitive people. And I definitely have always been one. And that was something that I always was like ashamed of, or I tried to snuff out. But at the end of the day, it's an intrinsic part of who I am. And it honestly has its pitfalls, but it has its highs. And we're learning to roll with the punches that life brings and the roller coaster of emotions that come with it. But alas, going back to the reason why I moved to Bali, after just disclaiming that the grass is not necessarily always greener, while also acknowledging the role that the external environment change can have in terms of being a catalyst, let's get stuck into how I kind of came to this decision, because it might seem really out of the blue to like you guys listening or following me on Instagram, because it might appear like I was living my best life, and I always do try my best to be super transparent. And I think I have done the best job I can in terms of being transparent and open and showing up on my page as my true authentic self to the extent possible. Obviously, there are some days where the last thing I want to do is come on Instagram when I'm feeling energetically and emotionally drained and be like, hey guys, I'm having a shit day. Because that's not what I also want to do. I don't want to put out negative energy for you guys or for myself, because obviously when you kind of sit with that mindset and like reinforce it by saying that that's the reality as opposed to just the current situation that you will get through and doesn't necessarily have to affect your whole day, week, month, it kind of reinforces it, okay? It's like the opposite of gratitude to a certain extent. So I'm not going to come on, you know, as frequently as I was having lows, being completely honest, over the last 3.5 months to be like bad vibes, okay? Because that's not what I want to bring to the table, but I also do want to bring transparency and honesty. And I'm showing up today to do that for you because I didn't really know if I wanted to record this, being completely honest, especially today. Like, it's been a bit of a day, starting from 6 a.m. when my alarm went off. Shit hit the fan, basically. And I was umming and ahhing once again about, do I want to do this? Like, do I even have the energy to show up and speak about something that I currently feel so up in the air about myself? Don't know. We'll see. We'll see how this pans out. But I'm just going to have no filter, no front, and just be myself, chatting as if I would to a friend. So yeah, be prepared for complete and utter transparency, as always promised on this pod. So I brought my little journal that I quite literally is my holy grail. I do not know where I'd be without it. And that is no exaggeration, honestly, especially because I've been doing a lot of like, you know, internal environment work, like I've been speaking about, and trying to like process my thoughts and emotions and self-soothe and like kind of understand the going ons in my brain, because at the best of times it's just like noise. Like, have you ever seen those TikToks where it's like playing like loads of like really loud noise and it's like me and then me in the gym when it like switches off? That's like me when I'm journaling. Obviously in the gym too, like that my gym is my safe place. And it was my first safe place for kind of, I guess, coping and getting through kind of hardships or not understanding my feelings or just anxiety or whatever it may be. Like, I went there this morning, for example, when it was the last place I wanted to be, but it was the only place I needed to be. But this, when it comes to like, I guess, a long-term fix, because the gym is kind of a short-term fix in the sense that you're not really acknowledging or processing and understanding what's going on up there. You're just kind of like getting those good feel good hormones pumping through your body, and it is a short term like uplift in mood. And that's not to knock it, like it has its place. Like it had its place for me. Probably wouldn't be sitting here right now if I'd sat at home up until the recording of this. So yeah, once again, great place to, I guess, heal momentarily. Emergency tool, let's say. But journaling, this is where the real magic happens. And if you don't do it, you got to start, because journaling is for everyone. It's not for just the people who move to Bali and who are in touch with themselves and like the cliche, you know, I get it. I know what it might seem like to outsiders looking in. It's like typical cliche Bali girl, journaling, you know, not a worry in the world. It's like, actually, that's exactly the opposite. If you read through this, you'd know. Journaling's for everyone. It's honestly like, I would recommend it to like my parents, say, for example, like older generation, especially, who were like always told to basically, whether directly or inadvertently, suppress their emotions and just get on with it. It's like, oh my God, the built up trauma that has created is insane. And this is where journaling comes in. Like, no matter who it is, what age group, what person, introvert, extrovert, whoever you may be, this is like an ongoing dialogue with yourself. It's a place that you can treat as a safe space for you to kind of put your everything on the table, like good and bad. Like, you can celebrate the wins with yourself, which I have done and continue to do. I love practicing gratitude. I don't know where I'd be without that either. But at the same time, it helps you cathartically release those negative lingering emotions that are holding you back. And that was something that I wasn't doing for a while. And I wasn't, I guess, journaling right, in the sense that I wasn't using it effectively to help me. I was just kind of like, you know, coming in to write little stories about something that happened, because like there basically was just a lot going on, a lot of like big life events that, you know, you'd hope would normally be spaced out for your own sanity over a time frame of a year, 2 years, all happening at once to me. So I was like, right, we're just going to journal about this really short and sweet, like paragraph, 1-pagers. That's all I had like the emotional bandwidth to do. But now that I'm kind of coming out of like this phase of disintegration, I hope, fingers freaking cross, I'm going into this phase of growth, I can kind of look at it with like a higher self perspective, big picture. And I practiced something last week, and it was like closing my eyes, because I really couldn't pinpoint. Like, I knew like on paper, like there were so many things going, quote unquote, wrong, right? There was a lot of big things happening, overwhelming things, scary things, sad things, like a lot happening, but I didn't quite know what in particular was bogging me down. And it was only when I meditated, I'd done my breath work, and I was sitting in a cafe, and I was just like, I can't have another day like this where I just feel scatterbrained, like so many things, like anxiety inducing, but I didn't know where they were stemming from, like just constantly in like my fight or flight mode. Even when I was regulating myself, it was always just lingering. I just like, no, I want to get it on the table. And whenever I took the pen to paper, it just kept coming back to the same things, and it wasn't helping. So I was like, right, what I'm going to do is I'm literally going to close my eyes here and not think. Okay, and this is something that we're going to chat about. I'm not going to think. This thing up here is my weapon for both good and bad, right? Like, I can deploy it in a way that serves me, but also in a way that does not serve me. And this is like the idea that you should be the master of your own mind. But when you're an overthinker, like I think a lot of us are, like, it's not like a rarity, to be honest, but I particularly am stuck up in my head as opposed to my heart space, and kind of listening to my intuition. I really, really do suffer with overthinking. And I don't think I've really acknowledged that for a while. Like, I knew it was a case for me in the past, but now it's like I almost have gone from that, and in this new, you know, along my healing journey, I've become aware of it, and I focused on, you know, practicing mindfulness, meditation, breath work, like all these different tools that have helped me like regulate my nervous system. But at the end of the day, like that trait of being an overthinker it still lingers, okay? And that in itself, I think, manifested in what's called intellectualizing your emotions. And this is something I hadn't actually thought about for a while, because I remember when I first started, I think it was around June last year, really kind of throwing myself deep into nervous system healing work. Like before then, I'd done it for a few modules in my master's, actually, which is where I learned so much about it. And at the time I found it so spoofy and I was like, this is such a piss take. And now I'm like, where would I be without it? But I did come across something, I think it was on TikTok. And I've actually spoken about this before. And it was like, remember the train analogy, if you've been listening to the podcast before, the train analogy where like if you're standing in front of a train and it's coming at you in full speed and you only have like 5 seconds, right? Whatever it is. How would you feel? And my first response was, I'd jump out of the way, duh. And the question was, how would you feel? Not what would you do? So it's like very like proactive as opposed to reflective, essentially. And there's a place for both. Obviously, like when a train's coming at you, that's what you should do. But that's like a fight or flight response, right? Like you're like hyper vigilant, like you're like always doing, not being, not just experiencing, as opposed to like proactively thinking, how can I fix this? And I think that's how I approached my healing for so long. It's like, well, if I do this, it's gonna fix this. And the more I learn and educate myself on all these topics, clearly the more healed I'm gonna get. It's like, well, actually, no. And it was actually on TikTok, I think just last night, and I haven't spoken about this in so long, so clearly AI is getting super freaky intelligent, because I didn't use that term, intellectualize your emotions, but you know the way the algorithm works, like it literally bases things off what it can hear, which, listening to me right now, fabulous. And it was like a TikTok, not just one, 2 in a row. I was like, are you taking the piss? 2 in a row talking about how a guy, so I really related with this guy in particular, was talking about how he was seeing a therapist and how his therapist said to him, see how you're speaking to me like you're a therapist? And he was like, yeah, like I'm really self-aware. And she's like, there's a difference between being self-aware and intellectualizing your emotions. And I couldn't relate to that more. Like I think for so long I was convincing myself that, you know, by doing all this work and like understanding all these concepts and like the theories behind everything, that I was healing. But it's honestly, the healing happens in the messy part, like when you're just sitting at home with yourself alone, feeling alone, like lonely, and feeling what that feels like actually like letting yourself lean into it as opposed to like distracting yourself, say, or processing something, like actually letting that negative energy out as opposed to compartmentalizing it and chatting about it like I am chatting it to you right now. Like even how I'm speaking to you right now, like it's very analytical, it's very like logical, rational, and that's just how my brain works, I think, because of how I've been conditioned and my influences growing up, but also that of like my studies, like I did law, you know, business and stuff. So it makes sense that I think this way, but it's honestly like a double-edged sword, because I understand all these concepts, but then when it comes to actually applying it for myself, like I can help my clients apply it in a way, because, you know, that's essentially what I'm doing. I'm coaching them on, as well as like personal training and nutrition, like stress management skills and techniques. And I can help them so much. But when it comes to helping myself, it's like, it's really hard to separate that logical, rational brain from that of, you know, the feeling, the being. And that is the difference between, you know, being reflective for the latter and being proactive for the former. So I think that's something going forward that we're going to be approaching this journaling a little bit more with, and I have been doing, like I said, when I closed my eyes and I wrote out all those things, that's when things happen. When I didn't think, I turned off the noise. It's like, no, I actually don't have time for this anymore. Like I was wasting my own time as well. Like I'm all about efficiency, and I get like anxious and stuff if I'm not feeling like I'm doing right. And that's something I'm still working on even to this day. It's honestly so hard to rewire your brain in terms of like sense of self-worth and where that comes from. So it was frustrating me so much. I was like, I've been stuck in this mindset for so long now. No, enough is enough. If that means I have to switch off my brain, I'm going to motherfucking switch off my brain, because clearly that's the only resort here, because I've been trying so long to push through, to resist, and just to keep doing business as usual. Business as usual wasn't working anymore. So that's when it's like, okay, like when will you see that that's the case? So I did that, and honestly, the most revealing experience, because it put to words the things that were really bogging me down, particularly. And then I was able to kind of come up with a plan, going back to the, I guess, somewhat intellectualizing it, but in terms of how I'm going to deal with that, like how am I going to change those circumstances so they're no longer affecting me. So I let myself feel it, but then I also let myself respond to it and think forward and long term and in the future, like how can I not feel this way anymore? So yeah, a reflective and proactive approach to journaling, that's my godsend. That's what I have been doing, especially lately. What I've always been kind of doing, I guess, but just on and off depending on my headspace. So without further ado, let us look at, I guess, the for and against list that I made. And this was something that, once again, the logical brain came in and was like, okay, we got to make a list. We got to understand like what's for and against, like what's in my best interest, like what's going to best serve my growth in all aspects, personal and business, like overthinking the fuck out of it. But I needed to do it at the time. This was a few weeks back. This was 18th of February. So yeah, it was fitting and it was something that needed to be done at the time, but it ultimately wasn't what led me to the decision that I'm making now. Because if we look at the list, which I'm not going to show you because obviously there's some personal things in here, I'll talk about some of them, but if we look at the list, the against going to Australia, which at the time was just for a short little trip to visit my friend Aisling, because I missed her so much and I still do, cannot wait to see her, was so much longer than the for. And I was like, oh, I remember being like really disappointed. I was like, oh, okay. Then I weighted them because I'm a nerd. So I gave them values out of 10 in terms of like how, I guess, much value they would bring. So say, for example, one of them literally was be with Aisling. How cute. So 4, be with Aisling, 7 out of 10. I mean, 10 out of 10, let's be real. You know, visa's coming up to an end, and it is. It's ending in like a few days. So yeah, my current visa for Australia needs to come in ASAP Rocky. 222, manifest. Please come through. I'm leaving in a day. You know, be back in normality. Get skincare, hair care, makeup, clothes. Like I've honestly, that's been like such a big thing for me. Like it's fully like available. These are all things that are available here, but there's so much harder to get and so much more of an effort. Definitely in my head. I think I've just been procrastinating the F out of things that will service me and just been prioritizing everything but me lately. So these are all things I've been putting on the long finger, and I'm knowing that if I move to Australia, I'll have no choice but to get my shit together with them, because you can't be rolling around in your gym gear or bikini top on your bike, because A, you don't do that there, and B, they don't have bikes, or they do maybe. Actually, I was chatting to a friend about this and they said I can drive a moped there, so that's the one against. The number one top against was risk losing pink bike. Lads, I'm going to be lost without my pink bike. Can I bring it with me? I feel like it brings my main character energy. I can bring it on my own, it's fine. You know, other reasons being like meet new people. Like I said, there's so many people that like I know out there that I'm like almost like pen pals with, as well as like being reunited with my other friends like Kate, Orla, Mauve. There's loads of girls out there and more coming. So there's so many reasons for, but the reasons against, honestly lads, there are so many. But then it came down to it and it was like they were all just risks. It was like risk losing pink bike, risk losing accommodation, which is where I'm currently staying because it's such a nice setup. I didn't want to have to lose it if I was only going for a month, say. Like miss out on opportunity like X, Y, and Z, you know, all this. And it came down to it, and I remember it's like almost like, you know, when you flip a coin, and I was like really disappointed when it wasn't the 4. And when I gave them values, the values for 4 outweighed the values for against. So like moving to Australia, or going to Australia at least at the time for a month, was what I clearly, when I weighed it and I subconsciously was trying to tip over in my favor, was to go. But I didn't go, and this was back in February. And even just going back to now, today, like when I was journaling this morning, I was thinking like how for so long I was putting off, I think it was, as I said, nearly 3.5 months, maybe longer, that gut feeling. Like I wanted to do it, but I wasn't trusting in my gut. I was not trusting my intuition, my ability to make a decision that I backed. I wanted other people to validate for me, external validation. I wanted even more so potentially signs to validate me. Like we're talking like I won a raffle at my gym, and that was a big sign to me at the time to stay. I was like, I'm going to stay. This is a really cool opportunity. It was like, free membership. I was like, this is the class gym. Love the community. Honestly, one of the main reasons I didn't want to leave Bali was because of my community at Obsidian. Like, honestly, I'm going to miss them so much. Like, family to me, they take care of me so much. And they even noticed the days that I were low and like were worried about me. They're honestly so, so sweet. And I'll miss them all so dearly. But I know I'll be back eventually. They're even throwing me a little going away party tomorrow. Pool party. Sunset. I'm so excited. But took those as signs. And I took like a work opportunity that was on the horizon potentially here as another sign. And there were all these potentials that either in the end didn't mean all that much or didn't materialize. And I could have just kept waiting it out and hoping. But unless I took action, nothing was going to happen. And it got to the point, I don't even remember, it was like around, I think 2 weeks ago. And keeping in mind, like my plan was always to be in Australia. Like I never actually planned to be in Bali, like long term. It was always meant to be post-pandemic, move here, at the time get a job in corporate. There's like a building that looks over the Sydney Opera House in the field that I was working in that I was like, yep, that's where I'm going to be. But regardless of the change in, the path, the location, I always wanted to be there. It was always somewhere that called to me. But I almost kept gaslighting myself in terms of being like, no, I'm not ready. Like my time here isn't over. Like I want to get more out of it. Like Sydney will always be there. Like making all these excuses. Like I don't want to be just seen to be like following other people. I don't want to get involved in the rental crisis. I want to like be more, I guess, established and further down the line in where I want to be, like in terms of my personal growth as well as my business growth. So there are so many reasons that I was like, no, it's not ready. I'm not ready. I'm not ready. I'm not ready. And I mean, 3.5 months of essentially undermining my own intuition and what I knew to be true deep down led me to this breaking point a few weeks back where I was like, lads, it's my time. I have to go. Like I've resisted this for too long. So this is where I want to talk about, I guess, not just me telling you a story. It's like the role for signs in making decisions and the role of intuition for making decisions, because there can honestly be all the signs in the world. And like, as I'm saying this, I'm still like, I don't know what is and what isn't. Like I haven't even got my visa to go to Australia in 2 days. Like there's been so many things even just this week alone that I'm like, is that a sign like that I shouldn't be going? Because like, certain obstacles are coming up. Like I said, visa, personal life things. And I'm like, maybe these are all signs. But then the day, like they have a role, and I'm not going to try and undermine that because there are little stories that I will touch on now that kind of gave me hope. There is a place for signs. Don't get me wrong. There are sometimes situations where the universe is pushing you to make a change. And I actually think my general discontentment and misalignment with where I'm at and where I want to be in Bali for the last few months has been Mother Bali's way of almost pushing me out, telling me it's not my time to be here anymore. And that's okay. I just was like in denial about it, I guess, for a little longer than I or Mother Bali would have hoped. And eventually came to my senses and realized that indecision was a decision. That lack of decision making in terms of umming and ahhing about it was in itself a choice just to remain the same, to remain stagnant. Because when I was staying here, like I wasn't changing anything internally. Like I felt stuck, and there was only so much that even that internal work could have achieved, because at the end of the day, like I said, the environment around me just wasn't supportive or helpful to my growth and where I need to be right now. So eventually got to the point that I was like, right, intuition, gut feeling, back to when I wrote that pro and con list, even just for a holiday, was telling me to go. Like the way I weighted the values, everything. So then I booked the flight and visa all in one day. And I remember feeling like there's actually a video of me like crying, sending it to the girls, being like happy tears, but like also sad tears, like nostalgia already kicking in. And it was such a weight lifted off my shoulders because I'd finally decided to do it, even though I had nothing planned, still don't. And I was like, oh my God, am I crazy? Am I crazy? Have I lost it? And I was going home late that night. I think actually that was the night I was changing accommodation. So I was moving to this new place and I was like, oh my God, what have I just done? What am I doing? But I was packing up. Everything like was all over the gaff, right? Packing up all my bits into a bag. That night, went to sleep. Next morning, woke up, got all my bags out, and keeping in mind, I'd everything packed, okay? Everything was packed up. Not like I'm very thorough when it comes to this type of thing. Like all these different bags, everything had its own bag. Very, very thorough. Not a thing left untouched or unchecked that it wasn't mine. And I go into my room after bringing like my bags out, like some of them, because there was a lot of them. And I go in and I check to see if everything's gone. And no joke, there sitting on my empty desk after doing a thorough cleaning of my gaff was a $2 coin. Keeping in mind, 1, I haven't been to Australia since 2018. Why would I have had a coin? And like I lived in that place for months and months and months, so like that came out of quite literally thin air. Like where the hell that came from, I'll never know, and that will baffle me to this day. And 2 is my angel number. 2 is my angel freaking number. And I was like, oh my God, it's a $2 coin. Okay, cool, sign, validated, exactly what I needed. And then honestly, since then, everything again. And that is the role that I think signs play. It's like they honestly are only what you give weight and value to them. So I clearly, it's like confirmation bias. Like I wanted something to tell me that was the right decision. That spooky ass sign that I'm not going to try downplay, like still to this day freaks me out because I don't know why there was a $2 coin sitting on my desk in a room that I lived in for months when I haven't been to Australia since 2018 and I own no other currency than Indonesian rupiah right now. So baffled me. And then even this morning when shit was once again hitting the fan, I found it on the floor. I'm like, where are you coming from? Like I had it in my bag because I wanted to keep it. I was like, this is clearly like a lucky thing. It just was on my floor. I'm like, what? Where did you come from? So yeah, there is, like I said, a time and place for signs, but it all comes down to trusting your intuition. Like I can look for all the signs in the world, but honestly, I'm just going to be overthinking the hell out of it. If you don't stop and just sit with what you know deep down is the right decision for you. It's just that gaslighting of yourself. It's that undermining your ability to make the right decision. There is no right decision. That's what I'm coming to terms with. Like, I don't think you ever feel ready to make the move, to make the change. That's scary because, like I said in my newsletter this week, change is scary. It's completely contradictory or perceived as a threat to that of your nervous system. So, you know, you'll never feel fully 100% ready anyway. But like not trusting in yourself to make the right decision when there is ultimately no right decision, because who the fuck knows? No one else knows but the higher beings, if there are any, if they're watching over us. Clearly there is, with my angel number 222 being ever present and ever more present recently. Honestly, like, it makes me, I need someone to explain to me what it exactly means, because I've been trying to look it up and there's so many different reasons behind it or meanings behind it, and I just don't know what applies to my particular situation, if any. But yeah, I've been seeing it so much, and I thought it meant certain things in the past when it didn't. So I think the bottom line is, it just is a reminder that you're on the right path. And that's all I really need, is that little bit of external validation, just a little bit. And from now on, I do want to rely on my gut, because at the end of the day, I feel like I have made the right decision, contingent on, you know, that visa coming in hot, like ASAP Rocky, and me finding somewhere to stay. So I'm not annoying my besties out there on their couches. Thanks, guys. But yeah, like, I am going to just go with my gut going forward. And like I have done, you know, when I made the move to here, and I'm so glad I did. Would not regret these 6 months. Nothing about it. Like, even the extreme lows, they were more than worth it for the extreme highs and the life memories and the connections I made and the progress I made in so many aspects of my life. But it is time to move onwards and upwards, for at least me. At least for now. Like, that's not to say I'll never come back to Bali. Like, it's such a special place for me, and there's so many beautiful souls that I'll be leaving behind, and I'm so sad to leave. But I will be back, and we'll just figure shit out as we go. Australia, Sydney is the plan indefinitely. And yeah, just take life as it comes. Whatever opportunities come my way, just roll with it and learn to trust the process. And lastly, I want to share with you guys something that, if you've been listening to previous podcasts, thank you, by the way, you will know where I'm coming from with this. But it's something that I wanted to get for a while now, and I wanted to think about it for a while, because while I am spontaneous, I don't like making overly major, permanent, at least, life decisions. Emphasis on permanent, because like the move to Sydney, for example, I can leave, I can go somewhere else, I can come back to Bali, for example. But permanent, I like to think about those ones for a little long. And I kind of procrastinated it as well, because I was scared of making the wrong decision. Once again, not trusting myself, because at the end of the day, I got exactly what I originally wanted, but just slightly different placement. So if you don't guess already, I got my second and final tattoo, which I don't know if you'll be able to see from here. Don't know. I'll try zoom in on this. We'll see. If not, I'll have an Instagram post on it, no doubt, because it's pretty. But yeah, got a little butterfly tattoo with my angel number 222, kind of sprinkled around it like glitter, fairy dust. And yeah, there's so much symbolism behind this one, being that of growth. So I could have gotten maybe a caterpillar somewhere, like my foot, because caterpillars, no offense, kind of ugly. So I wouldn't want that on any visible part of me. But yeah, got the butterfly to symbolize growth, and also kind of flying. So as opposed to like stagnant, like you'll see if you look at the Instagram post or the photos I put on my story, whatever it may be, or if you can see it in that little snippet, who knows. As opposed to like a flat butterfly, like 2D, which is quite like, that's the butterfly, like stagnant, like staying still, stand still. I wanted it to be moving, like on the go, constantly evolving, constantly growing. And its placement is like a little bit, this could be a stretch now for you guys, but for me at least, the way it is going away from me, like it's going up and beyond and out, it's expanding, it's evolving, it's still on that journey. Because that's something I really want to emphasize, is that I'm still working on it. I'm still working on myself, healing and growing and evolving and figuring shit out as I go, being completely transparent. I'm not going to ever try to pretend otherwise. So yeah, that is something that, a little part of it that I love as well, is like it's slightly more, I guess, not apparent if you're looking at it, but for me, I know that that's, that, you know, I guess on the go aspect of it symbolizes always evolving. And the 2 is obviously my angel number. So that all together, especially on my wrist. Like, I don't want it to be, it's not for visibility purposes. Like, you can't see it. It's not for anyone else but myself. It's to constantly remind myself in these moments of like, fuck, what's going on? It's okay. It's fine. Everything will work out. You've grown in, you've evolved this far, and you will only continue to evolve, and you are aligned and on the right path. So that's the angel number. So it's just, yeah, constantly serving as a reminder to myself that everything is okay. Everything will be okay. And if you've made it through the shitstorms before this, like I know all of us have been through in so many different regards. I know we've all been through a lot over the last few years. And I think in particular now, a lot of us are hurting. I think that's a common theme that has been coming up in like check-ins and, you know, chats with friends. I think there's a lot of us going through phases of disintegration where there's like a lot of chaos, hardships, obstacles, challenges. And it's both consoling, but also when you feel, like I said, like I feel energies quite deeply, it's a lot, because like I take on that energy too. So I think that's partially why I've been feeling everything so intensely, is that a lot of people around me are experiencing it. So just know that you are able, as you always have, to overcome absolutely everything life throws at you. And that is not to gaslight your experience, by the way, because I know it can be so freaking annoying when you're going through shitstorms and people are like, you know, you're only ever given what you can handle. It's like, yeah, okay, Catherine, I get it. I don't know why I said Catherine, sorry if there's any Catherines listening. I get it, right? It's fucking, I'm able for it. I just don't want to have to deal with it again. I just want like a simple life. But at the end of the day, like we all, the best of us, I think, go through a lot so that we can come out the other end a butterfly and evolve and help others help themselves. I think a lot of people who kind of go through a lot themselves, their life calling usually is to help other people in some capacity. So just know that, you know, while not undermining your experience, if you are going through or have been going through a lot lately, that you are capable more than you ever realize and still believe to be the case. You are more resilient each and every time you overcome a phase like that. So yeah, just keep your head up above water, guys. And if it's something that you feel you're going through, know that I'm always here to chat and empathize and relate to in so many regards. On that note, I would like to say thank you so much for being on this journey with me. I have been completely taken aback by the positive responses and the messages and just the listenings as well. Like I wasn't expecting to get anyone listening really when I first started this. So yeah, it is something I want to continue, as I said, when I relocate, but just when and where will be determined when I figure it out. But thank you so much for following this far. And if this podcast episode or podcast in general resonates with you, follow it, like it, share it with a friend, because it might help them. And ultimately that is my life's goal, is to help especially my fellow females not feel alone in whatever journey they may be on. So thank you so much for listening, guys, and who knows when we'll chat again soon. But in the meantime, go and follow me on YouTube, because I'm thinking of starting vlogging, because I do have a vlogging camera, which I just don't know how to use, and on Instagram, because that's obviously where I'm most active, at Mauve Coaching. Thank you so much, guys, for listening. Bye.